in this video, what we want to do essentially is to understand and address some of the most basic and key apprehensions that a lot of candidates have when they reach out to us to prepare for their MBA applications. My name is Piyush Ranjan. I am the founder of Management Masters. We are a boutique admissions consulting firm for the top MBA programs around the world. Over the past few years, our candidates have gotten into some of the most exquisite and selective B schools such as Wharton, Kellogg, Booth, Columbia, MIT Sloan, INSEAD, LBS, HEC Paris, ISB, and I can keep naming other schools as well. But that is essentially what we do. We help candidates get into these top schools to achieve their career goals. The first thing to understand here is that if you have low academic grades, that is going to affect your applications in one way or the other. So the first step that you need to do is accept that reality. However, just because you have low academic grades, it does not mean that it's not something you can ever make up for. You can take certain steps to ensure that you are still able to showcase your academic credibility to the B schools. Now, when it comes to academic credibility, the first thing to understand here is that most B schools focus heavily on the quantitative aspect of your candidature to understand if you will be able to sort of make up or align with the rigorous curriculum that they have, which is very quant heavy. So when you take your test scores, having a high test score, especially in the quant side, is extremely important for you to build upon that aspect and showcase to the B schools that you will be somebody who is not defined by the low grades that you had in your bachelor's, but you are able to take that quantitative aspect and you have that quantitative skill. The second thing, apart from the test scores, what you can do is you can take quant based sort of college courses, or you can take courses such as Harvard Core, which can further act as testament of your quantitative abilities and also signal to the B schools that you are somebody who is very serious regarding business education. The third thing, and this is something which is very important that candidates need to keep in mind, is that you have the option to share your story with the optional essays available at the B school applications. So most business schools will give you an optional space where you can elaborate upon any extenuating circumstances that you faced which led to that low score that you have in college. So use that optional essay space and sort of tell the B schools about your situation so that they can better understand your context and then put your experiences and assess those experiences aligned with those situations that you've faced. Here, when it comes to assessing your professional capabilities, what you need to understand is when you work with very strong brand names, right, that already gives the schools an idea of your professional capabilities, because usually such high value brand names are also very selective in nature. So it already tells the B schools and signals to them that you are potentially a very high potential candidate. However, just having that signal is not enough. What B schools also look for and assess is essentially how have you performed, how have you grown through the roles, and what kind of an impact have you created. So if you come from a very high brand name company, but you don't showcase your professional capabilities or professional learnings, and you don't showcase the impact that you have created through your work, it will not lead to very fruitful results. And that's why you will always find some people coming from very strong backgrounds but still not being able to make it to top B schools. Now, this does not mean that if you work with startups or lesser known firms that you will be at a disadvantage. Again, go back to the impact factor, right? So if working with startups or smaller firms, it gives you that opportunity to be able to create much larger impact than you would be able to create through larger firms, right? So if you are able to showcase that impact that you have created, if you are able to showcase the professional maturity that you have developed through your professional stint so far, that automatically puts you in a very good place when it comes to B school applications. And we have worked with many candidates who came from similar backgrounds and they have been able to get into some of the top business schools around the world. if you come from unconventional backgrounds, like let's say you're a lawyer or a CA or a military personnel or something else that, where MBA does not really hold a lot of water, it comes with both an advantage and a disadvantage. So let me start with the disadvantage first. The biggest disadvantage of coming from such a background where MBAs are not really common is essentially that when you talk about going for an MBA, you need to be absolutely clear in terms of when you explain why do you really need an MBA. If you're able to explain that very well, then that would work in your favor. However, it's very imperative for you to be able to explain that aspect, because the B schools might not really understand why exactly are you going for an MBA when the area of your choice does not really require that. The biggest advantage of coming from such backgrounds is that it automatically makes you a very unique candidate. And you don't have to put in extra efforts to showcase that you are somebody who comes with a unique background, because that's inherent to your profile itself. So it can act as both a blessing and a curse. Blessing because you become a unique candidate automatically, naturally, and a curse because you will need to be very clear about your reasons for going for an MBA. Why are you pursuing this at this time? And what exactly do you hope to achieve through that? I think within India, it's a very common question, because a lot of people go for CAT and then they go for their first MBA right after college without much work experience. And then after working for 4 to 5 years, they usually look on for a second MBA. Again, the question does not have a direct answer. Not everybody requires a second MBA, first of all. But again, it comes down to your personal requirements. As a second MBA candidate, the biggest challenge that you will have is very similar to what I just said, that you will need to be very clear about your requirements from a second MBA. Why exactly do you want that? You will need to sort of quantify that and make it very clear to the B schools that this is what you expect to learn or gain through the MBA program. It could be about changing your jobs, it could be about changing your geographies, it could be about sort of moving into a different role or changing function. But that aspect needs to be very clear of why exactly are you trying to do this. Again, another disadvantage or something that you have to be very cautious about when going for a second MBA is essentially that while most top B schools allow for second MBA and they don't really have any reservations against it, there are certain schools which actively discourage second MBA programs, right? So before you sort of commit to a business school, before you decide that you would want to apply to a particular school, make sure that you reach out to your target schools and sort of confirm with them if they are open to second MBA candidates. Because if not, then your application would be a complete waste. The first thing to understand is what exactly constitutes a career gap, what is called as a career gap. So if you have a gap within your two employments, which is less than 2 months, usually most business schools will sort of disregard that. They don't consider 2 months to be a career gap. But if you have a professional gap which is more than 2 months, then most business schools will allow you and will provide you a space within the employment section of their application where you can elaborate upon what exactly happened and why do you have a gap of more than 2 months. Now, if let's say you have a much longer gap, for instance, we have worked with many candidates who had multi-year gaps because they were preparing for UPSC and then they were not working during that period. If you have certain situations like that, then what we very often suggest candidates to do is to utilize that optional essay space and explain to the B schools what exactly were you doing during that time period where you were not working. And this is something which is very crucial, because again, what your role is, you are providing enough context to the B schools to ensure that your candidature does not get affected, and also that the B schools are able to sort of put themselves in your shoes and understand what was happening exactly from your perspective. And that is something which is very crucial to understand. Only advice that I usually give to candidates is essentially just a very important thing when it comes to MBA programs is getting down and just doing the application, spending a lot of time introspecting and thinking about what are you trying to achieve from the MBA, why are you trying to achieve that, and also identify aspects of your story which will help you portray yourself in a better way. And that requires a lot of introspection. So just get down into the process, think about who you are as a person, what defines you, what drives you in your life, and then how your decisions or motivations have driven you through your career. If you are able to do that, you will be able to build very, very strong applications and get on to the dream schools that you have as well.